Ballabha Giribharatari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Gopi Jana Ballabha Giribharatari Gopi Jana Ballabha Giribharatari Yashoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yashoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Giribharatari Gopi Jana Vallabha Giribharatari Yashoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yashoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jai Nitya Vishnu Pad Paramahamsa Pali Prajaka Ashto Tarshata Śrīmad Bhāgavatam ISKCON BBG Founder-Acharya save the whole world Srila Prabhupada ki Jai Nitya Vishnu Pad Paramahamsa Pali Prajaka Ashto Tarshata Śrīmad Bhaktivedanta Saraswati Thakur Maharaj ki Ananta Koti Vaishnavinda ki Nama Acharya Srila Haridas Thakur ki Premsaka Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Sadhguru Bhaktivedanta ki Shri Radha Krishna Gokapanath Samakunda Radha Kunikit Govardhana ki Braj Bhumi Shivandama Dama ki Navadip Mayapur Dama ki Purushtam Chetra Jaganapur Dama ki Ganga Mai ki, Jamuna Mai ki, Bhakti Devi ki, Tulasi Maharani ki, Samaveta Bhaktivedanta ki, Jai Nitai Gaur Premanandi. All glories to somebody's. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to somebody's. All glories to Lotus feet. Shri Guru and Shri Garanga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Well, the verse is no purport. Verse 20's got a purport. Let's see how far we go. Shukruvacha Ano Sabanarash Chakshu Ano Sabanarash Chakshu Ano Sabanarash Chakshu Pareshnush Cha Traya Sutaha Pareshnus Cha Traya Sutaha Pareshnus Cha Traya Sutaha Ano Sabanarash Chakshu Pareshnus Cha Traya Sutaha Sabanarat Kalanara Sabanarat Kalanara Sabanarat Kalanara Srinjayas Tat Sutas Tata Srinjayas Tat Sutas Tata Srinjayas Tat Sutas Tata Sabanarat Kalanara Srinjayas Tat Sutas Tata Shri Shukruvacha Ano Sabanarash Chakshu Pareshnus Chatraya Sutaha Sabanara Kalanara Shinjayas Tatsutastata Shishukruvacha Ano Sabanaras Chakshu Pareshnus Chatraya Sutaha Sabanara Kalenara Shinjayas Tatsutastata Vaishnavis? Shishukruvacha. Shri Shukadev Goswami said, Anu of Anu, the fourth son of Yayati. Sorry, the fourth of the four sons of Yayati. Sabanara, Sabanara, Chakshu, Chakshu, Pareshnu, Pareshnu, Cha, also, Traya, three, Sutaha, sons, Sabanarat, from Sabanara, Kalanara, Kalanara, Srinjaya, Srinjaya, Tatsuta, son of Kalanara, Tata, thereafter. Translation. Shukadev Goswami said, Anu, the fourth son of Yayati, had three sons named Sabanara, Chakshu, and Pareshnu. O king, from Sabanara came a son named Kalanara, and from Kalanara came a son named Srinjaya. So, you may remember the story of Yayati, how he actually approached his sons. When he was getting older, he approached his sons to get their youth, and none of them would do it, but the youngest son actually gave his youth to Yayati. And Yayati's main aim was sense gratification. He just wanted to enjoy life further because he's getting old, and the fact of it is when you get older, you can't really enjoy so much. A lot of suffering comes with age. You know, the body starts to fall apart, and you know, even simple things like we take for granted when we're younger, like sleep, becomes quite difficult because you can't actually find a comfortable position to sleep in. You sleep on one side and it gets sore. You turn to the other side, you sleep on that side, it gets sore. And it's like, this is just what it's like when the body ages, because it's falling apart. And when things fall apart, they just don't work properly. And so he wasn't having a particularly pleasant experience as he was aging, because he was. And it's often the case with many of these kings, because they have extraordinary facilities for sense gratification, they kind of lose their way a bit sometimes. We see this happens quite regularly, actually, with some of these kings, if their focus is not Krishna consciousness. You know, because the forces of Maya are very, very strong, and her business is to bewilder people. And she's very expert at it. She's very expert at it. And so we see that, and this is, for us, it's really important to note that in order to overcome the influence of Maya, we need to seriously take shelter of the lotus feet of Krishna. As Krishna explains in the 7th chapter, he says, Deveshi Gurumaya, Mamaya Duratyaya. Mamaya Duratyaya. He says, Duratyaya, very difficult to overcome. Duratyaya. Mame vijay prapadyante mayam mitam taranti. For those who surrender unto me, they can easily cross beyond this influence of Maya. So Krishna is giving us the clue here, is really the only way you're going to conquer Maya is by taking shelter of him. Because he'll protect you from it. And Maya, when you have Krishna's protection, Maya will never go there. I had an interesting experience as a child. I used to go to school down near Geelong. And my brother was in the form ahead of me. And he had this friend who was like the school tough. He was like the toughest guy in the school. And he liked me. So no one ever picked a fight with me, because they knew that the tough guy liked me. So it's kind of like that. If Krishna has got your back, as they say, Maya is completely hands off. And the way that Krishna has your back is by giving your life to serving Krishna. As Krishna says at the end, in the end of the Gita, that there is no person in this world who's more dear to me than that person who is busy preaching the message of the Śrīmad Bhāgavatam. It says, nor will there ever be one as dear. So if we give our life to canvassing on Krishna's behalf, then Krishna's got our back. He'll take care of us. We have, and the thing, as he says to Arjuna, he says, "Ma suchaha," do not fear. We shouldn't be so worried about, obviously you have to practice devotional service, but if we're prepared to sacrifice everything we have for Krishna, what do you think Krishna is willing to do for us? He says, as they surrender unto me, I reward them accordingly. So if we give our life for Krishna, he'll be prepared to give his life for us. And we see this time and time again with different, look at Prahlad Maharaj. What happened with Prahlad Maharaj? His father tried to kill him in so many different ways, yet Krishna always protected him, no matter what. Thakur Haridas, there was that interesting pastime in the Chaitanya Charitamrita where the Lord was performing these nocturnal kirtan pastimes, and he was calling all the different Vaishnavas forward and explaining to them how he had been there for them during different difficulties, particularly Thakur Haridas. We know that Thakur Haridas was beaten in 22 different marketplaces. And Lord Chaitanya revealed to Thakur Haridas how he had taken the beatings. And he showed his back, and he had all the scars on his back from the beatings. And this is because Thakur Haridas had given his life 100% for the service of Lord Chaitanya. And he was willing to take on any type of suffering for the service of Lord Chaitanya. So we see that there's wonderful examples there in the scriptures explaining to us how the Lord will protect us if we simply do one small thing. Just give this life to Krishna. And it's kind of like, it's his anyhow. Well, where has this body come from? Where is this life come from? It's come from him anyhow, so we're giving back to him what's already his. But just that acceptance, that acknowledgement that this body belongs to Krishna, that this life belongs to Krishna, that's all we have to make. That this is his life, therefore I'll use it in his service. That's all we need to do. And in that way, Krishna will protect us. And so we see like what happens with these different kings because of the forces of Maya. Not only because of the force of Maya, because also in order to be someone in the role of a king, generally requires someone to be quite passionate, very much influenced by the mode of passion. And when the mode of passion is prevalent, it's very easy for us to become overwhelmed by passionate desires. So this is why we see on the path of bhakti, we try to cultivate sattva-gun, not rajagun. Because rajagun, as we know, what does rajagun always end in? Anyone know? Distress. It always ends in distress. Because you're always dissatisfied as a result of rajagun. Ignorance ends in madness, and sattva comes illumination. You actually see things as they are. So Prabhupada encouraged his disciples to, and all of us, to cultivate the mode of goodness. Because from the mode of goodness, we can start to see things as they are. We can start to understand about this material universe. We can start to understand about the nature of the self. We become reflective about the nature of the self, about why I'm experiencing what I'm experiencing in this material world. But when we become absorbed in the mode of passion, we're unable to do that. We only just see what's right in front of us, and we react with what's right in front of us. And as I was saying, the kings, they tend to be quite passionate, and therefore they can easily become bewildered. You'll only see that those kings who are great devotees of Krishna are actually able to overcome the influence of the material modes of nature. All right, I'll read a few more verses. From Srinjai came a son named Janmejaya, not the same Janmejaya that was the son of Parikshit. From Janmejaya came Mahashala, from Mahashala, Mahamana, and from Mahamana, two sons named Ushinara and Tatikshu. The four sons of Ushinara were Shibi, Vara, Krimi, and Daksha. And from Shibi again came four sons named Vrishadharva, Sudhira, Madra, and Atma Tattva Vit Kakaya. So it seems like Kakaya was quite an advanced devotee because Shukadeva Goswami is calling him Atma Tattva Vit, so he understood the nature of the self. He understood Atma means self, Tattva means the truth, and Vit means to know. So he understood the truth about the self, it would seem. The sons of Titikshu, the son of Titikshu was Rushadrata. From Rushadrata came Homa, from Homa, Sutapa, and from Sutapa, Bali. Then by the semen of Dirgatama in the wife of Bali, the emperor of the world, 6 sons took birth named Anga, Vanga, Kalinga, Suma, Pundra, and Odra. And it's interesting because you'll see in these dynasties or these lines that are being explained here, many, many great personalities have taken birth. And it's talking about here Bali, the emperor of the world. And then he had 6 sons named Anga, Vanga, Kalinga, Suma, Pundra, and Odra. Now, Kalinga, it seems to me it's the same person because it's saying here in the next verse, these 6 sons headed by Anga later became kings of 6 states in the eastern side of India. These states were known according to the names of their respective kings. And then from Anga came Kalapana, and from Kalapana came Divirata. King of Kalinga, does that ring a bell with anyone? There's a very interesting story in the Krishna book. How, wasn't he playing dice with Balaram? And he was smiling, and then Balaram smashed his teeth. I think that's the king of Kalinga. And so we see, this is describing all these great personalities. And these personalities were so exalted, they're actually engaged in pastimes with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, because it's not an ordinary person that gets to take birth in a situation where they can have a direct interaction with Krishna, or or Balaram, or Lord Chaitanya, or any of these great expansions of God. It's certainly even when they take birth as demons, we see with Hiranyakashipu and Hiranyaksha, who are described as being the Adidaityas. They're like the original demons. They were already personal associates of Krishna in the form of Jai and Vijay. The personal associates of Lord Vishnu, they were the doorkeepers. They would see the Lord every day as he came and went from the palace. So, obviously, great, great personalities. And so it's only a great personality, even who gets to take take birth as a demon and to fight with the Lord. It's not an ordinary person that can do that. And it's described by our acharyas how it's only a great devotee that actually gets to take birth to fight with God. It's not just any demon can do that. So we can see how these great personalities like Hiranyaksha, Hiranyakashipu, Ravan, and Shishupal, and Dantavakra, and Kumbhakana, and all these types of personalities, actually great personalities who've taken birth as a demon to serve Krishna. And so these kings here, they obviously, there's some history there. And there are certain books you can read to, that sometimes give insight into the history of these personalities, so we get an understanding of how it is they wound up in that different situations. And you see in the Bhagavatam it describes in a fair amount of detail the birth of Hiranyaksha and Hiranyakashipu and how they wound up in this situation. And some demons are described like that, but in the Bhagavatam not so much, because the Bhagavatam is focusing more on the pastimes of the personality of Godhead, and it gives us those descriptions. Okay, so from Divirata came a son named Dharmarata, and his son was Chitrarata, who was celebrated as Romapad. Romapad, however, was without issue. Therefore, his friend Maharaj Dasarath gave his own daughter named Shanta. Now, I'm assuming this is the same Dasarath, who's the son of, who's the father of Ram, but I'm not sure. I'm not sure, because you'll see that many of these names are repeated. Romapad accepted her as his daughter, and thereafter she married a famous personality, Rishi Shringa. So he was quite a famous rishi. He was young, very young, like a child rishi, living in the forest. And when the demigods from the heavenly planets failed to shower rain, Rishi Shringa was appointed the priest for performing a sacrifice after being brought from the forest by the allurement of prostitutes. Because initially, as far as I remember the story, they approached him to come and perform this yajna, and he didn't want to come. He just wanted to stay in the forest and perform tapasya and penance. So then the kings, they used all sorts of how would you say, inappropriate means to try to lure him to come to the city to perform these yajnas so they'd get rainfall. And so one of the things that they did is they used prostitutes to allure him, and the prostitutes were dancing for him and embracing him and things like that. And he became quite affected by that. And so then when he became affected by that, he realized he'd come into a fallen position, so therefore he went to the city to do what they were bidding. And he also got married at that time. There's a whole story about it. It's quite interesting, which I, from memory, is recorded in the Ramayana. So the allurement of prostitutes who danced, staged theatrical performances, accompanied by music, and embraced and worshipped him. So this is, again, you can see how, if we're not fixed in our service to Krishna, how we can become easily bewildered. Because you're living in a big city like Melbourne or so many places in the world, there's so many allurements. Constantly we're being attacked by the forces of Maya. And if we're not fixed in our determination, then we can easily be bewildered. And even though Rishi Shringa, he'd been performing tapasya in the forest for many, many years, and he was a very, very elevated rishi, still these prostitutes were able to bewilder him to the point where he gave up his tapasya, his austerities, and went and lived in the city. So this, for us again, we should see this as a warning of how determined we need to be in our service of Krishna, and how seriously we need to take shelter of the lotus feet of Krishna. Otherwise, we'll become bewildered. Otherwise, we become misled and led, taken from the path of devotional service and attracted to the material nature. And ultimately, you see with Rishi Shringa, he became frustrated. He gave it up, as is often the case with these sages. After Rishi Shringa came, the rain fell. Thereafter, Rishi Shringa performed a sun-giving sacrifice on behalf of Maharaj Dasarath, who had no issue, and then Maharaj Dasarath had sons from Ramapad by the mercy of Rishi Shringa. Chaturanga was born, and from Chaturanga, Prithu-Laksha. Next verse. The son of Prithu-Laksha was Brihadrata, Brihat-Kama, and Brihad-Banu, the sons of, From the eldest Brihadrata came a son named Brihanmana, and from Brihanmana came a son named Jayadrata. And I'm not sure if it's the same Jayadrata that was present at the Balakurukshetra, so I don't know. The son of Jayadrata by the womb of his wife Sambhuti was Vijay, and from Vijay Driti was born. From Driti came Dritavrata, and from Dritavrata Shatkarma, and from Shatkarma came Adirata. While playing on the bank of the Ganges, this is the famous Adirata. Does anyone know who Adirata is? He's the adopted father of Karna. Remember, like the story that's there in the Mahabharata, is Kunti, when she was a young woman, or basically a child, had been serving Durvasa, and Durvasa Muni was very, very powerful, and Durvasa Muni was famous for serving Lord Shiva, and he also, because of his service to Lord Shiva, he'd taken the nature of Lord Shiva to some extent. So he was very easily pleased, but he was also very, very easily angered. So Kunti had been serving him, and when Durvasa was staying at the house of her father, and so he was pleased with Kunti, and he wanted to give her a benediction. So he gave her this benediction. It's kind of interesting because these types of benedictions, we can see how they come about by the arrangement of Krishna. Because he gave her this benediction whereby she could call any devata, any one of the demigods, and be impregnated by them and have a child. So when she got this benediction from Durvasa, she was curious, and she wanted to test out to see if it worked. And then so she called the sun god, and the sun god came, and all his effulgence and everything like that, and she was like, "Wow, it really works," And she said, "Okay, you can go now." And he said, "No, that's not how it works. You've called me to be impregnated." And she said, "Oh no, I can't do that. I'm just a young girl. I'm not married. If I have sex with someone, how will I get married in the future? How will I have sons and things like that?" He says, "No, don't worry. I'll impregnate you, but you won't lose your virginity. You won't lose your chastity." And she said, "But if I'm carrying a child, everyone will know that I'm pregnant." He said, "No, it won't happen like that. The child can be born from your ear." And so what happened was Karna was born from the ear. Karna means the ear. So he was born from the ear. When Adirata found him, he was called Radheya because of the mother's name, the son of Radha. And so what happened was the son was born immediately, and he was a very handsome personality, and he was born with natural armor and natural earrings. And we see later on that he gave up that I think it was Krishna asked charity from him, or Yudhisthira asked charity from him, I don't remember the detail. Asked charity from him, and he gave up that armor. Because with that armor, wearing that armor, he couldn't be defeated. And so what happened was Kunti gave birth to this child, and then fearing retribution or fearing condemnation from her peers and her family, etc., she put the child into a basket in the river, and the child floated down the river. And then Adirata found that child when he was down by the river. Adirata was a chariot maker. He used to make chariots. And so he was kind of like not a Kshatriya by nature, but Karna, or Radheya as he's known at that time, was a Kshatriya because he's born of Kunti and the sun god. And this benediction came in useful later on, so we can see how Krishna's plan is there and how his arrangements are there, because later on what happened was Kunti and Madri, they married Pandu. And Pandu, he was really, he liked living in the forest. He liked living in the forest much more than he liked living in the palace. And so he would spend a lot of time in the forest. And then one time he was out hunting, and the Kshatriyas, they were allowed to hunt because this is how they honed their martial skills. And so one time he saw a deer, and he fixed the deer in his sights, and he didn't sort of concern himself with the fact that the deer was engaged in sort of nuptial activities with his partner. And so he killed he shot an arrow which pierced the deer. And then he went to claim the deer. And then when he got there, he saw that the deer had turned himself back into a sage. And actually it was a sage who, because in the form of a sage, he's engaged in tapasya. He couldn't do things like that. But he thought, okay, I'll take the form of a deer, then I can engage in these nuptial activities with my wife. And so he turned both of them into deer, a deer and a doe, and they were engaged in having sex. And at that point, Pandu pierced him with an arrow while he was having sex with his wife. And so as Pandu approached, he cursed him. And he said, because you have interfered with me enjoying with this intimate moment with my wife, you will never be able to have sex if you try to have sex with your wife, you'll die. And so as a result, Pandu couldn't impregnate his wives. And so then what happened initially was Kunti then, after this had happened, and Pandu wanted to have children, she revealed to Pandu that she'd received this benediction from Durvasa Muni. And so Pandu was very happy with that. And he asked first that she should call the god of Dharmaraj, Yamaraj. So she called Yamaraj, and Yamaraj impregnated Kunti, and as a result, Yudhisthira was born. And Yudhisthira was often also referred to as Dharmaraj because he was a very righteous person, a very pious and righteous person. He would always act according to truth. He was never willing to tell a lie. And we see even during the Battle of Kurukshetra, Krishna himself had asked Yudhisthira to tell a lie, and he refused to. He wanted to start saying that Ashvatthama was killed, because Krishna had told him this is the only way you'll be able to defeat Dronacharya, because Dronacharya was a great obstacle. Dronacharya and Bhishma in particular were great obstacles on the path of victory for the Pandavas. The others weren't so great, but these two were particularly powerful. And also, because of the Pandavas' affection for these two personalities, they found it very difficult to fight them. Like Yudhisthira found it very difficult to fight with Dronacharya. And Arjuna, Arjuna was Dronacharya's favorite student. So how could he kill his guru? And Bhishma Dev was his grandfather who'd raised them from childhood. How could he kill him? So there were great obstacles. It's only by Krishna's trickery that they're actually able to defeat them. So, and it's said that up to that point, because Yudhisthira was such a pious king, such a righteous king, that he actually, his chariot never touched the ground. And some people who misunderstand, they say, oh, it's because he told a lie, because he broke the laws of Dharma, that his chariot touched the ground. No, it's because he didn't follow Krishna's instruction. That's why his chariot touched the ground. Because he failed to follow Krishna's instruction. Because this is what Krishna says to Arjuna in the end of the Gita, the final instruction of Krishna in the Gita. He says, abandon all varieties of religion and surrender unto me. That's the ultimate instruction of the Gita, is to surrender to Krishna. And because Yudhisthira failed to do that, therefore he lost that pious benefit. Anyhow, so the first son born from Yamaraj was Yudhisthira. Then came Vayu, the wind god, and Bhimsen was born from there. And then came Indra, the lord of rain, and Arjuna was born from that. And then what happened was, sometime later, because they were in this particular very, very beautiful area, staying with the sages in the forest up in the base of the Himalayas. It's called 100 Peaks or something. I can't remember exactly. But a very, very beautiful area. It was springtime, and the breezes were blowing. They're very pleasing. You know how you get those warm breezes at the start of spring. All the flowers are blooming. Everything was very, very attractive, and and all these things were serving to sort of incite Pandu's desires to enjoy with his wives. And so he happened to be there with Madri, and Madri was very, very beautifully decorated, etc. And so he became overwhelmed with desire to enjoy with her. And practically speaking, he forced himself upon his wife, even though Madri was trying to stop him. She wasn't able, because he's a very powerful person. And so what happened as a result of the curse, he engaged in nuptial activities with his wife, and he died. And so then later what happened was, they performed the funeral rites and stuff like that, and Madri wanted to have children. Because actually what had happened was Pandu had asked Kunti to have more children. Kunti said, no, I won't do it. And then Madri and he said, what about Madri? And she said, okay, I'll do it one time for Madri. So the Ashwini Kumaras came and impregnated her with the twins Nakul and Sahadev. Then later on, what happened, as I mentioned, is Pandu engaged with in nuptial activities with Madri. He died. They performed the funeral rites, and Madri, because there was some backwards and forwards going on. It was an interesting conversation because Kunti wanted to enter into the fire with Pandu to perform the sati rites with Pandu because she was the elder. So naturally, the privilege would go to her. But Madri argued that well, you know, I was embracing him when he died, so I should do it. But also, I wouldn't be able to look after my children, or your children, with the same neutrality that you would be able to look after my children. I would favour my children over your children, but you won't do that. So, based on that, then it was decided that Madri would enter into the fire. So, you know, it was kind of an interesting story. And then after that, they went to Hastinapur, and it was a great thing when they came back to Hastinapur, because no one in Hastinapur had ever seen the Pandavas. And when they saw them, they were quite amazed with how beautiful their forms were and how powerful they were. And then Bhishma, at some point later, he identified Dronacharya as being the martial guru, because they were young, they were teenagers. He identified Dronacharya should be the martial guru, and then from there we see how they learnt the martial arts, etc. And Arjuna actually became Dronacharya's favorite. All right, I'll read the rest of these verses. While playing on the bank of the Ganges, Adirata found a baby wrapped up in a blanket. The baby had been left by Kunti because he was born before she was married. Because Adirat had no sons, he raised his baby as his own. This son was later known as Karna. Karna meaning ear, yeah? O king, the only son of Karna was Vrishasena. Druja, the third son of Yayati, had a son named Babru, and the son of Babru was known as Setu. The son of Setu was Arabda's son was Gandhara, Gandhara's son was Dharma, Dharma's son was Drita, Drita's son was Durmada, and Durmada's son was Pracheta, who had 100 sons. I guess they would be the Prachetas, who's also we see that they're being described in the 6th canto, describing the tapasya they performed and the instructions they received from Lord Shiva, assuming that is the same Prachetas. The Prachetas occupied the northern side of India, which was devoid of Vedic civilization, and became kings there. Yayati's second son was Turvasu, the son of Turvasu was Vani, the son of Vani Bharga, the son of Bharga Banuman. The son of Banuman was Tribanu, and his son was the magnanimous Karandhama. Karandhama's son was Maruta, who had no sons, and therefore adopted the son of the Puru dynasty, Maharaj Dusmanta, as his own. So Puru was the son of Yayati, who agreed to give up his youth for his father's pleasure. And then, where are we going? Okay, I'll read the last verse before the purport. Maharaj Dusmanta, desiring to occupy the throne, returned to his original dynasty, the Puru dynasty, even though he had accepted Maruta as his father. O Maharaj Parikshit, let me now describe the dynasty of Yadu, the eldest son of Maharaj Yayati. This description is supremely pious, and it vanquishes the reactions of sinful activities in human society. Simply by hearing this description, one is freed from sinful reactions. So we see how Shukadev Goswami is explaining to Parikshit Maharaj why it's important to hear these descriptions, because now he's going to start describing the Yadu dynasty. Who appeared in the Yadu dynasty? Who took birth in the Yadu dynasty? Krishna. Yeah, so it's leading up to Krishna's birth. This will take us through, I think this is the last chapter actually. No, there's one more chapter. And the next chapter is talking about Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So the rest of this chapter is going to be focusing on the personalities, from Yadu leading up to the appearance of Krishna. And so then in the next we've got one more chapter in this canto, then we go into the 10th canto, and the first 5 chapters, the first 3 chapters deal with the birth of Lord Krishna. And then you'll see all these wonderful descriptions of Krishna's pastimes in Śrīmad Bhāgavatam. And so very interesting, and like you can, like I say, you can study these different dynasties more and learn about who these personalities are, because, as I was saying before, they're not ordinary personalities. They're very, very powerful, very great, pious personalities, and many of them were directly involved in Krishna's pastimes. So this just gives us a hint of how great a devotee they are to be directly involved in Krishna's pastimes. And you'll see leading up to the next chapter, all these different personalities that take birth. Any questions at all? Any comments? Yes.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, thank you so much for the class which gives us the direction where we're heading right now. Actually, I'm more interested to go to Krishna always, straight away, but it's good to know all these personalities. My question is, Prabhuji, so now, yesterday I remember Prabhupada Prabhuji was mentioning about that sun god and moon god, or the sun god and moon god, from where all these dynasties come. So do we belong to sun god or moon god, or?
The sun dynasty and the moon dynasty are the dynasties for the Kshatriyas. And particularly the sun dynasty and the moon dynasty, Krishna appears in those, like Raghu. You know, the Raghu dynasty, Lord Ramachandra, and that's coming from the sun. And the Yadu dynasty is coming from the moon. I don't know about your dynasty, but in Australia, generally we're more Malechas and Yavanas, in countries like that, tend to be lower class. But we see, at least spiritually, Prabhupada would say we belong to the Achyuta Gotra, because we come in that line from Krishna, because we're taking shelter of him. So the dynasty we take shelter of spiritually is more important than the dynasty we're born into. Because it's just like, when you take shelter of a spiritual line, you become a Dvija. What does Dvija mean? Dvi means two, Ja means birth. So it means we take second birth. So the second birth is more important than the first birth. The first birth is irrelevant. Because you look, I mean, all I have to do is look at my history, in my life. What I was before I came into contact with Prabhupada's teachings and the process of Krishna consciousness, and where I am now, is very different. I was habituated to sinful activities, etc., etc. And that was basically a very bleak outcome on a path like that. But by taking to the process of Krishna consciousness, by taking shelter of Prabhupada's teachings, then that changes. And that's what's significant. The material birth is irrelevant, because we're all born in low-class families, basically. Even though we may have some material kind of claim, it might be wealthy or born in a Brahmin family or whatever like that, it doesn't really mean much if it's not connected to Krishna. Because that's the only thing that really means anything, is that we're trying to surrender to Krishna. And then our existence becomes meaningful. Before that, it's meaningless.
Can I ask another one, Prabhuji?
Huh?
Can I ask another doubt?
Why not?
Thank you.
If you don't let you.
So Prabhuji, in the class you're discussing about the surrender to Krishna, how we can surrender to Krishna, so we don't need to worry about
Yeah.
But I'm not fully surrendered to Krishna. That's what my understanding with my sadhana and everything. I'm still attached.
Yeah.
So that means I'm still bound to karma.
Yeah.
So what is my hope?
The future is very bright. if you serve Krishna. Because the thing is like, are there any pure devotees here in the room? Any pure unalloyed devotees? Put your hand up. Yeah, we're all in the same boat. We all have material desires. We all have attachments, attached to our family, attached to our job, attached to our car, all these different things. But the only hope we have is to cling to the lotus feet of Srila Prabhupada, to cling to the lotus feet of our spiritual master, to try our best to serve Krishna, to give this life. Prabhupada said, just give this one life to serving Krishna. That's the only hope we have. I don't think any of us were born in a family, like you look at Srila Prabhupada, he said his father was a pure devotee. How many of us had that experience? I can tell you, I certainly didn't. My parents were meat eaters. They were, they were trying to be religious, but not necessarily so. They didn't have much of an understanding what religiosity is. So we're all in a similar situation, but we understand the process of bhakti is very, very potent. The chanting of Hare Krishna Mahamantra is very, very potent. The association of devotees is very, very potent. So if we just try to our best capacity to engage in devotional service, to chant the holy names, to associate with devotees, to convert our home into a holy place, so that wherever we look, we're thinking of Krishna, then this is going to purify us. And it's a process, And Srila Prabhupada, he would often say that Krishna, he only sees the bright side. So even though we may have some anarthas, even though we may have some disqualifications, and let's face it, this Kalaya Dosha Nidhe Rajan, he says there's an ocean of faults, and we're right in the middle of this ocean of faults. But by Krishna's compassionate nature, by Krishna's kindness, he just sees, oh, this person's doing some service for me. He sees that. He doesn't see the, all the disqualifications we have, because the fact of it is we're an ocean of faults. So, obviously we try to rectify the faults. We try to see how our past has shaped us into being who we are now. And we try to overcome that by the process of bhakti. So the process of bhakti is a great benediction upon living entities in this age. And it's the mercy of Lord Chaitanya, because previously, to practice bhakti, you had to have so many different qualifications. But now Lord Chaitanya, he's come, and it said, there's only one thing he asks for devotees. Only one thing he asks, and that's faith. Just have faith. By taking shelter of this process, I will become God conscious. So, in that situation, we just take shelter, try to take shelter of Lord Chaitanya more and more all the time, because he's Mahavaranyaya avatar. He's the most magnificent incarnation of Krishna. And he, if you just take to the chanting of Hare Krishna, that's all he asks. Just chant Hare Krishna, he'll deliver us. Simple thing. So in this age, we're very fortunate. Even though Kali is a very difficult age, in this age we're very fortunate because Lord Chaitanya has made it very easy for us. So just, take shelter of that. That's all we need to do, is just take shelter of Lord Chaitanya's mercy. And we go back to Godhead. Simple. Okay? Anything else? Okay, thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki. No questions? Samaveta Bhaktivinoda ki. Jai Nitai Gaur Premanandi.